I turned 36 on a rainy Thursday in Portland, and for once I wasn't expecting much. No party, no dinner reservations, no carefully planned surprises. Allison had insisted on something low-key, just you and a few friends, she said, her voice breezy like she was too tired to make it a big deal. Truthfully, I didn't mind. Work had been draining me dry, and the thought of a quiet meal and a night off from pretending everything was perfect actually sounded like a gift. The day started normally. Coffee on the porch, a few messages from old college friends, and a surprise call from my mom that mostly involved her asking if I was still planning to give her grandkids before the world ends. Allison had already left for work by then, leaving behind a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Can't wait for tonight, Reheart, eh?" She'd been sweet lately. Not overly affectionate, but thoughtful. Little touches here and there, my favorite cereal back in the pantry, new beard oil on the bathroom counter, a playlist she made for me that she swore was "So You, It Hurts." I took it all at face value. I didn't know yet what was waiting on the other side of the stay or how deep the damage already ran. That evening, Allison texted me the address for dinner. It was a place I vaguely recognized, a music venue with a trendy restaurant attached, somewhere in the Pearl District. I figured she was being artsy or nostalgic. The rain hadn't let up all day, so I pulled on my coat, grabbed an umbrella, and headed out, expecting maybe 6 or 7 people tops. A quiet booth, some candles, a toast. I even rehearsed a quick thank you speech in my head, just in case. I parked a few blocks away and walked to the entrance, umbrella dripping, my boots catching puddles along the sidewalk. As soon as I pushed open the door, I was met with a blast of music and light. Surprise! My heart actually skipped a beat. For a second, I thought I'd walked into the wrong place. There were at least 50 people crammed inside, confetti raining down from somewhere, balloons tied to the backs of chairs, and a banner overhead that read, "Happy Birthday, Randall." Everyone was clapping and smiling like I was the returning war hero. Friends I hadn't seen in years, Allison's co-workers, people I barely recognized but was too polite to forget. I stood there stunned, trying to smile like I wasn't already short-circuiting. Allison appeared through the crowd, radiant in a black dress I hadn't seen before. It hugged her in a way that made her look more like a guest than my wife. She kissed my cheek, whispered something like, "You didn't see this coming, huh?" and laughed. No, I hadn't. She led me through the maze of bodies, introduced me to a few of her gym friends, none of whom I remembered her ever mentioning, then handed me a glass of wine. For the next hour, I floated from conversation to conversation like a man watching his own life from outside his body. People kept calling me lucky. Lucky to have such a thoughtful wife. Lucky to be celebrated. Lucky to be loved. At some point, Allison nudged me gently and said, "Can you do me a quick favor? There's a box of gift bags in the green room for the band. Just hand them to the coordinator backstage. He's expecting you." "Sure," I said, grateful for the excuse to step away from the noise. The backstage area was dim and quieter. I followed a narrow hallway past stacks of amps and folding chairs. The green room door was propped open. I stepped inside, expecting to find the gift bags or a clipboard guy waiting. What I found instead was Allison. Not alone. She was standing close, far too close, to a man I immediately recognized as Graham Sinclair, her boss. I'd only met him twice before. Corporate guy, a little too polished, one of those men who always looked like he just got off a yacht even on a Monday morning. He had one hand on her lower back and she had both hands on his chest. They weren't kissing, not exactly, but their faces were so close they might as well have been. There was an Macy in the air I hadn't felt from Allison in months. They didn't hear me walk in at first. I stood there, silent, my pulse pounding so loud it drowned out the dull music bleeding through the walls. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Then Allison glanced over her shoulder. Her eyes locked with mine, and something flickered, shock, panic, guilt. She stepped back like she'd been caught with her hand in the till. "Randall," she said too quickly. It's not what you think." "Of course it wasn't. It never is." Graham cleared his throat and straightened his jacket. "Hey, Randall," he said, trying to smile like this was a meet-cute. "We were just—" "Don't," I said. "Just that. One word." My voice sounded foreign to me, low and dead. Allison rushed toward me, her voice soft but urgent. "He was just helping me set things up. The sound system, the lighting." I leaned in to thank him and your hands landed on his chest?" I asked. "Right?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Nothing she said would fix what I saw. Nothing would unsee the way they looked at each other. The way her body language changed when she saw me. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a yellow envelope I had tucked there earlier in the week. At the time, it was just a precaution. A maybe. something I thought I'd never use. I handed it to her. She looked at it with confusion, then slowly peeled back the flap. Her hands trembled just enough for me to notice. Inside were divorce papers, dated, signed, ready. For a long second, neither of us said anything. From the main hall, I could hear people chanting, "Speech! Speech!" The clapping, the laughter. It was distant now, like it belonged to another life entirely. Allison's eyes started to water. She looked up at me like she wanted to say something, anything, but I was already turning away. I walked out of the green room, back down the narrow hallway, through the curtain, past the cake and the photo booth and the carefully arranged table settings with my name on them. I walked straight out the front door. The rain hadn't stopped. I let it hit my face, cold and sharp, as I stood under the awning. Somewhere behind me, my life was still clapping. But inside, something had broken. And I wasn't sure it could be fixed. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. Nick's guest room was quiet, unfamiliar, and smelled faintly like lavender and an old water heater. I lay on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring at the popcorn ceiling. The kind of silence that filled the room wasn't comforting. It was a kind of static and interference, something that hummed inside my skull and wouldn't let me rest. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't always hit you all at once. Sometimes it shows up slowly, like fog, creeping in under every door and window until everything looks different. Even your memories. That's what I was doing. Rewatching my marriage, one scene at a time, through a new, sharper lens. And suddenly, all the things that used to feel off but harmless now felt loaded with intent. It started with the gym. Allison's gym phase began about 10 months ago. At first, I was impressed, happy for her even. She said she wanted to feel stronger, healthier. So she got a membership at one of those upscale boutique fitness places downtown. She started going 3-4 times a week. She bought new clothes, switched to protein smoothies, even started counting macros. I was proud of her discipline, but there were weird things. She never invited me along. Not once. When I offered to join a class, she laughed and said, "You'd hate it, trust me. It's all cardio and screaming instructors." I remember that day clearly. She looked nervous, like I'd crossed into some territory I wasn't supposed to see. Then there were the shopping bags. I'd occasionally find new clothes tucked in the back of her trunk, with tags still on them. She always had a story. A gift for my assistant. Just something I'm returning later. I bought it on sale. Don't worry, I used a coupon. But I never saw her wear any of it. The bags would vanish as quietly as they'd appeared. She also started using a new perfume. A subtle floral scent. First, I liked it. Then I remembered something from years ago. She once told me floral perfumes gave her migraines. So I asked her why the sudden switch. She shrugged and said, "I guess I grew out of that sensitivity." I didn't question it. I let it go, like I let so many things go. And then there were the business trips. Allison worked in project management for a mid-size firm with a rotating door of deadlines and off-site meetings. She wasn't one to exaggerate about work, at least not before. But last fall, the trips started increasing. Weekend retreats, out-of-town client visits. One time she was in Seattle, supposedly, but I found a hotel receipt in the trash a few days later. It was from San Francisco. When I asked about it, she blinked, paused too long, then said, "Oh yeah, they switched locations last minute." I nodded. She smiled. We moved on. I kept making excuses for her. She's tired. She's stressed. She's just trying to rediscover herself. But then came the shift I couldn't ignore, the phone. Her phone had always been around, sometimes buzzing with work stuff, social media, casual texts. Then it started living face down on the table. Locked. Silent. No previews. She'd take it with her everywhere, even into the bathroom. I teased her once, called her Secret Agent Allison, expecting her to laugh. But she just muttered something and changed the subject. Worse, she started laughing more at her phone than at anything I said. There was a time when I could make her laugh without trying. Those little inside jokes that only we understood. But now, her eyes lit up for whoever was on the other end of that screen. I remember one night vividly. We were watching a show together, something we'd started as a couple. I looked over and saw her grinning down at her phone. "What's so funny?" I asked. She hesitated. "Oh, Graham sent me a meme. Stupid office joke." Graham. Her boss. The same man I saw her pressed up against backstage. Suddenly, all those late-night messages, the emails she said she had to answer immediately made sense. My stomach churned. I sat up in bed and rubbed my eyes. The light from the tablet on the nightstand blinked. I brought it without much thought, an old, barely functioning piece of tech we kept around mostly for streaming. But it was still connected to our shared cloud account. Out of curiosity, or maybe desperation, I opened the photo app. There they were. New uploads. Timestamped just 3 days ago. Images I had never seen, taken on her phone and automatically synced. One was a sh*T from a hotel balcony. Sunset, wine glass, 2 shadows on the floor. Another was a mirror selfie, Allison in a fitted red dress I'd never seen. Too dressy for work. Too sultry for dinner with friends. I clicked through each photo with numb fingers. One was taken from inside a restaurant, dimly lit and upscale. She looked beautiful. But not for me. She hadn't meant for these to sync. She'd forgotten the tablet even existed. I scrolled back and found older uploads I'd missed. One from 2 months ago, from a weekend she said she'd spent with her sister. It was a photo of a room service tray, breakfast for 2. I zoomed in on the reflection in the glass window. A blurry figure of a man. Graham? I didn't know. And yet I did. I closed the tablet and stared at the wall, breath shallow. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. She hadn't just emotionally checked out. She had physically stepped into another life. Around 6 a.m., Nick knocked lightly and poked his head in. He held a mug of coffee like it was an offering. "You good?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But thanks." He nodded and left the door open behind him. Later that morning, I showered, dressed in yesterday's clothes, and sat at the edge of the bed again, this time less stunned. More focused. I opened a folder on my phone called Gift Ideas for A. I used to jot down notes there, things she liked, things she wanted. But now it became something else. I renamed the folder. Evidence. I added photos. *TS. Timelines. I made a note of every inconsistency I'd written off. Every new lie I could now trace. Friday dinner, hotel photo, not with coworkers. Seattle trip, confirmed San Francisco hotel charge. Gym excuse, overlap with Graham's class? Phone call at 11:37 p.m., Graham. The more I listed, the more certain I became. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I was right. And I had been right for a long time. By mid-afternoon, I'd called a lawyer. Not to book anything just yet. I just wanted information. I asked if I could speak anonymously. They said yes. I described my situation in vague terms. The woman on the phone was clinical but kind. She asked me if I had documentation. I told her I was working on it. She said, "When you're ready, call back. But don't wait too long. Timing matters." I ended the call and stared at the rain outside. Portland looked the same. But nothing else did. At 3:47 p.m. I got a text from Allison. "Hey babe. Sorry I didn't text sooner. Hope you're having a good day. Thinking of you." That was it. No mention of the party. No mention of me leaving. She was pretending it didn't happen. Or maybe she was waiting to see if I'd pretend too. I didn't reply. I turned the screen face down just like she used to point. 3 days after the party, I stopped pretending I was holding myself together. Nick's apartment was starting to feel too clean, too quiet. Every surface had intention like a catalog photo, and the silence was beginning to gnaw at me. I was grateful, sure, he'd let me crash on his couch the first night, then his guest bed without asking questions. But I could feel myself fraying at the edges, unraveling like a sweater I'd worn too long without mending. Sleep came in shallow stretches. Food tasted like drywall. Everything in me ached, not just from heartbreak, but from the effort of holding back the full weight of what I suspected. Until then, I'd had theories. Circumstantial dots I connected in my own head. But I still lacked the kind of evidence that silences doubt. That quiets the voice inside that says, maybe she didn't mean to. Maybe it's not what it looked like. I needed to K*LL that voice. Not out of revenge. But clarity. So I could move forward and never turn around again. I got my answer in the form of a forgotten tablet. It was late afternoon when it happened. I was pacing around Nick's living room with a half-warm mug of coffee, debating whether to scroll mindlessly or scream into a pillow when I heard the familiar buzz of an old device powering back on. The tablet, ours, technically, had been dead for months. I'd only brought it out of habit. Allison used to use it for yoga videos or recipes. I assumed it had been long since disconnected. But apparently, the Wi-Fi kicked in and it came to life with a blink. And then the notifications started appearing. Not just photos this time. Messages. The cloud sync was still active. Not just for images, but for texts. And somehow, in the fog of her secrecy, Allison had either forgotten or never realized the old backup sync hadn't been fully shut off. I didn't touch it at first. I stared at the screen like it might bite me. The messages scrolled in, over 100 of them. A few familiar names. Group threads. But then I saw him. Graham. The name flashed over and over. I opened the most recent one. It was timestamped that morning. Graham, last night was insane. Still thinking about you in that dress. I don't think I can wait another week. My stomach dropped. I scrolled up. I wish I could say I was shocked. But it was worse than shock. It was the slow, deliberate confirmation of everything I already knew. Allison, he asked me if I wanted to do a weekend trip. I told him work's too crazy. Didn't want to risk another excuse. Might have to play the sweet wife again for a bit. Graham, ugh. You're too good at that. He buys it every time. Allison, yeah, well, he wants to believe I'm still into him. It's easier. There were messages going back months. Photos. Inside jokes. Nicknames. Shared memories of places I'd never heard her mention. Things I'd chalked up to her just being busy or burned out from work. But this wasn't burnout. It was a full-blown affair, calculated, consistent, and rehearsed. They had a system. Specific dates where she needed to be careful. Code names for hotels. Even a list, yes, an actual list of excuses she'd used successfully. There were messages like, Allison, told him I had cramps again. Worked like a charm. Graham, poor guy probably thinks he's the problem. Smirking face. And then, the worst one. Allison, honestly, sometimes I forget what it felt like to be attracted to him. With you it's just so easy. I feel alive again. Alive. That word again. I felt sick. Cold all over. Like the blood had left my body. There's a kind of heartbreak that screams. That wants to tear walls down. And then there's the kind that goes completely still. That was me. Motionless. My hand hovered over the screen, my mind trying to catch up. I wasn't looking at a slip-up. I was looking at documentation. A step-by-step guide to the collapse of my marriage, co-authored by my wife and her boss, right there in front of me. I took a breath and did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I took *TS. All of them. Every disgusting word. Every timestamp. Every plan. I backed it up twice, once to the cloud, once to a private flash drive I brought with me for work files. I labeled it simply A Records. It felt clinical. Distant. Safer that way. The worst part? She mocked me. They both did. In one thread, she joked about how predictable I'd become. That I never questioned her anymore. That I was sweet but oblivious. I had been faithful. I had been present. I brought her coffee in the mornings, left notes in her work bag, planned anniversary trips she didn't even show up to with real enthusiasm. And still, I was a joke to her. When I finally looked up from the tablet, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring out the window at the overcast Portland sky, the reflection of my face in the glass pale and unfamiliar. There's something dehumanizing about betrayal that organized. It doesn't just hurt, it makes you question if you ever mattered at all. Nick came home a little after 6. He took one look at me and said, Jesus, what happened? I handed him the tablet. He scrolled for maybe 30 seconds before setting it down like it was too dirty to keep holding. I'm so sorry, man, he whispered. I nodded. Yeah. Me too. We didn't say much after that. We just sat there while the TV played something neither of us watched. At some point, he brought over a bottle of bourbon we'd opened once for New Year's and hadn't touched since. I drank without tasting. 1 glass. Then 2. But even that couldn't take the edge off. Because it wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. This wasn't a mistake. She didn't trip and fall into someone else's life. This was planned. Hidden. Protected. Sustained. I'd been in love with a version of her that didn't exist anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and emailed the lawyer I'd spoken with briefly the day before. I attached a zip file with all the *TS. I wrote, I'm ready to move forward. Let me know next steps. He responded in less than an hour. Understood. With this documentation, there will be no ambiguity. Let's schedule a meeting ASAP. I stared at the email, then closed the laptop. Allison still hadn't tried to call. That told me more than anything else. She either didn't care or she still believed she could steer this narrative. But not anymore. The next morning, I blocked her number. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't want her voice messing with my decision. I wasn't interested in explanations. I wasn't interested in apologies shaped like justifications. I didn't need her to tell me how she didn't mean for it to go this far, that she felt trapped or didn't recognize herself anymore. I'd heard versions of that before, from friends, from movies, from broken people trying to bandage over what they'd done. I didn't need that. What I needed was separation. And I was finally ready to make it permanent. The silence wasn't just for her. It was for me. After I sent the **TS to the lawyer and blocked Allison's number, a strange calm settled over me, an eerie, sterile kind of stillness. Not peace, not yet, but a space where my thoughts weren't all-consuming. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want drama. I wanted distance. I wanted control. And the only way I knew how to get it was to vanish. I packed a small suitcase that afternoon. Nothing dramatic. Just enough. A couple changes of clothes, a laptop, the flash drive, a book I'd meant to finish 2 summers ago. I shut off my phone. I left the tablet behind. Nick didn't ask questions. He just handed me a spare key, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Wherever you're going, make it count." I think he understood. He'd been through his own kind of heartbreak years ago, a fiancé who disappeared with his best friend and half his furniture. He told me once that the worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was how ordinary everything looked afterward. The same couch, same curtains, same silverware drawer. A haunted house that pretended it wasn't. That's what my life had become. Familiar on the outside, rotting on the inside. So I left. I didn't go far, just far enough to not be found. I booked a small rental east of the city, out near Hood River. It was quiet, off-season, just me and the wind through the trees. No notifications. No photos. No lies. Just time. And in that time, Allison began to unravel. Even though I had blocked her number, I still had access to our shared email. It wasn't intentional at first. I logged in to cancel an old streaming subscription, but once I was in, I couldn't look away. There were messages from her. Dozens, growing more frantic by the day. It started with soft concern. "Allison. Hey. I know you're upset. Can we please talk? I'm so sorry for the other night. I never meant for things to get weird. I need you to understand." Then came confusion. "Allison. Why aren't you answering? Where are you? Please don't do this. Can we just clear the air? You're blowing this way out of proportion." Then desperation. "Allison. Okay, this is ridiculous now. You've been gone for days. Nick's not answering either. Are you trying to scare me? Because it's working. Please call me." Then anger. "Allison. You can't just disappear. You don't get to run away and act like you're the victim. This marriage wasn't perfect. You know that. We both let things slip. Don't act like I'm the only one who made mistakes." Every message swung between pleading and blame, guilt and ego. Like she couldn't decide which version of herself would get a response from me. The warm one? The sorry one? The one who still believed she could talk her way out of this? I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop called Final. Inside were 3 PDFs, the divorce petition, the list of documented infractions, and a timeline of her affair, complete with **TS, date stamps, and excerpts. Cold, factual, undeniable. I printed everything. I didn't have a printer at the rental, so I drove into town and found a FedEx office. The guy behind the counter looked bored until he saw the stack I handed him. His eyes skimmed over a page and then snapped back to me. He said nothing, just nodded slowly and stapled the packets in silence. It was a weird, dark moment of solidarity. When I got back to the rental, I put everything in a manila envelope and placed it inside my duffel. The next morning, I drove to the law firm downtown, glass doors, leather chairs, a receptionist who didn't smile. My attorney's name was Fletcher, mid-50s, soft-spoken with eyes like steel. He didn't say much as I handed him the envelope. Just opened it, flipped through the contents, and nodded with a sort of mechanical approval. After 20 minutes of reviewing, he looked up and said, "You're covered. We'll move fast." That was it. No judgment. No pity. Just logistics. That's what I needed. We set a date. The paperwork would be served in person. Fletcher's tone was cold, surgical. "Do you want us to notify her first?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. Let her find out like I found out. No warning." He nodded. Understood. Back at the rental, I sat by the fireplace with a mug of instant coffee and stared at the legal draft on my screen. I reread every line. I added one clause, something small, personal. I wanted to keep the books. All of them. Even the ones she never read. I didn't want them because I loved them. I wanted them because she didn't. Because sometimes reclaiming something meaningless is still reclaiming something. The next day, Fletcher's office confirmed she had been served. I asked how it went. Delivered at her office, the assistant said over the phone. She looked surprised. Didn't say much. Just took the envelope and walked away. Good. I imagined her walking back into her glass-walled corner office, trying to compose herself. Probably closing the blinds before opening the envelope. Probably sitting down slowly, smoothing her skirt, expecting maybe a love letter or a note begging her to talk. Instead, she got facts. She got dates and timestamps and ***. She got a list of reasons. Proof. Paper cuts in legal form. That evening, a new email arrived. Allison. I don't even know what to say. You blindsided me. Is this really how you want to handle things? After everything? I thought we were better than this. I closed the browser. She was still playing the role. Still hoping to direct the scene. But the stage was gone. The curtain was already down. She started showing up after that. Nick texted me the next day, FYI, she came by. Twice. Left a note. I didn't answer the door. I told him to toss the note. He did. The following week, she showed up again. This time, while I wasn't there, she left a box on the front step. Inside were random trinkets. Photos. A watch I thought I'd lost. A dried flower from our first anniversary. It was like she was trying to remind me of the life we had before she burned it down. Nick took a photo of the box and texted me, "You want this?" I stared at the image for a while before replying, "No. Donate it." A few days later, she stopped by my office. I wasn't there. She left another note. My coworker handed it to me like it was radioactive. I threw it away unopened. She couldn't reach me anymore. Not really. And she knew it. That's why her next move wasn't a letter. It was a person. Graham. He showed up at my office, of all places. No appointment. No warning. Just walked in wearing a blazer and that smug smirk I'd seen backstage. My receptionist buzzed me and said, "There's someone here, Graham Sinclair? Says he needs 5 minutes." I told her to send him in. He walked in with that same fake calm, like we were about to discuss refinancing or fantasy football. He sat down without asking and said, "Look, I know you probably hate me right now." "I don't hate you," I cut in. "You're not important enough for that." He blinked. Just once. Then recovered. "I just wanted to say, none of this was meant to hurt you. Things got complicated. But we didn't plan for this to happen." I stared at him. "Are you here to apologize or defend yourself?" "I guess both." I nodded slowly. "Here's the thing. I don't care. I'm not interested in your version. I'm not interested in hers. You both made your choices. And now you both get to live with them." He stood, trying to keep whatever dignity he had left. "I hope someday you'll understand." "I already do," I said. "That's the problem." He didn't reply. Just left. And with that, the last piece fell into place. No screaming. No fights. No messy public spectacle. Just silence. Just absence. And for the first time in months, I could finally breathe. It started with a knock. I was staying at a temporary place by then, a furnished unit downtown above a nail salon, barely 600 square feet. It was small, but it was mine. No memories in the walls. No scent of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. No echoes of laughter that had turned into distance. Just quiet. So when the knock came, I knew it wasn't random. Nobody just dropped by here. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the door, listening. Another knock followed. Then silence. Then her voice. "Randall, I know you're in there." She said my name like it still belonged to her. I opened the door. There she was, Allison. In a charcoal coat I'd bought her last Christmas, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked tired. Different. Like the polished mask she wore in boardrooms and photos had finally cracked. I didn't invite her in. I stepped aside, didn't say a word. She took that as permission and walked in slowly, scanning the apartment like she was trying to find something familiar. There wasn't anything. She sat on the edge of the couch and folded her hands in her lap. "I've been trying to reach you," she said. "I know." She looked up. "You blocked my number." "I did." Her face twitched. Not shock, annoyance. Like she was losing control of the script. She cleared her throat. "I got the papers." I figured. Silence stretched. I didn't sit. I stayed standing near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, not because I was angry, but because I didn't want to give her comfort. "Not yet." "Randall," she said quietly, "this isn't how I wanted things to end." I let the words hang there for a moment. Then I said, "You wanted things to end?" She looked startled. "No, I mean, not like this. I didn't want us to fall apart." "You didn't want us to fall apart," I repeated. "But you had a backup plan just in case?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. "It wasn't a plan. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Her composure wavered. "I made a mistake." "Don't," I said sharply. Don't call it a mistake. A mistake is spilling coffee on your shirt. What you did was a pattern, a structure, a secret you maintained, lied to my face about, and protected like it was something sacred. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. I was lost, she said. I didn't know who I was anymore. Everything felt off. You were distant, you were I held up a hand. Stop. She paused, mouth slightly open. You're not going to twist this into being my fault. I'm not, she said quickly. I'm just trying to explain. You're trying to control the narrative, I said. You're trying to make this something that happened to you instead of something you did. That landed. I saw it. The flicker of frustration behind her eyes. The shift from guilt to calculation. I wasn't happy, she said finally. Then you should have said that. I did. You didn't listen. I did listen. You just didn't say everything. You left out the part about Graham. You left out the hotel rooms. You left out the text threads about how pathetic I was. She winced. You weren't pathetic. No, I said. But you wanted me to be. That silenced her. She sat for a long moment, staring at the floor. Then she looked up again, and this time her expression had changed. Softer. Like she was reaching for a different version of me, the one who used to forgive small things with a shrug and a smile. I know I hurt you, she said. I know I betrayed you. And if I could undo it, I would. But this thing between us, it's not all bad. We had good years, Randall. We built something real. Then why didn't that matter when you were undressing for him? Tears welled in her eyes. This time they fell. She looked down at her lap, shoulders trembling. And for a split second I felt it, that old instinct to reach out, to comfort her, to make it easier. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about comfort. It was about consequence. She looked up, tears streaked across her cheeks. Can't we try? Can't we talk to someone? I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't end it like this. This is already over, I said. It doesn't have to be, she whispered. We can rebuild. You're not mourning me, I said quietly. You're mourning the control. The version of me that bent so you could stay comfortable. That guy's gone. You didn't K*LL him. You released him. She blinked like I'd slapped her. You don't mean that. I do. I was confused. No. You were cruel. She stood up then. Anger rising beneath the tears. You think you're so perfect? You think this is all on me? No, I said. It's not all on you. But the part where you lied, cheated, and humiliated me? That's yours. She turned away, breathing fast. Then turned back. You were emotionally absent for months. You stopped trying. You buried yourself in work. You never saw me anymore. And instead of saying that, I replied, you opened your body to someone else and closed your mouth to me. We stood in silence for a beat. Finally, she said, so that's it. I walked to the door and opened it. She stared at it. Then at me. I don't even get to speak? You've been speaking this whole time. You just haven't said anything. She stepped toward me. I loved you. No, I said. You loved the version of me that didn't make you feel guilty. And then, without another word, I stepped outside into the hallway, walked to the elevator, and left her standing there. I didn't go far, just down the block to the cafe. I ordered a coffee, sat by the window, and stared at the steam rising from the cup. My hands were shaking. Not with rage. Not with grief. With freedom. When I got back, she was gone. The apartment was just as I'd left it, small, quiet, clean. The only sign she'd been there was a faint scent of her perfume lingering near the couch. I opened the window and let the air wash it away. She didn't come back after that. But the emails resumed. Allison. I shouldn't have said some of those things. I was overwhelmed. Please, Randall. Let's talk again. Allison. I miss you. You were my home. Allison. I don't know who I am without you. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was bitter. Because I'd finally found a way to hear my own thoughts without her voice layered over them. The following week, Fletcher called to say she'd officially signed the first set of divorce documents. There were still formalities, financial disclosures, and a final review, but the core was done. She didn't contest anything, he said. Didn't even ask for mediation. Of course she didn't. She knew she'd already lost the version of me that would have bent backward to compromise. I spent that night alone. No music. No distractions. Just me and the knowledge that the next chapter was already being written, even if I hadn't read the first line yet. I didn't feel happy. But I felt right. And sometimes that's the best kind of healing there is. I moved out for good that week. Into a one-bedroom near Alberta, no frills, no memories. Allison once called that part of town too chaotic, but that felt like the right kind of energy now. Real. Alive. I donated everything I didn't need. Tossed the photo albums, burned the concert tickets. I stopped checking her socials. Not out of strength, but because I forgot. I read books. I walked at night. I took a pottery class. I laughed once out loud unexpectedly. Not because life was good, but because I'd survived. For the first time in years, my life felt like mine. The divorce was finalized on a gray Thursday. We met at Fletcher's office. She wore a blazer. No makeup. No ring. I didn't say anything, and neither did she. We signed. The silence between us said more than any speech could. As she stood to leave, our eyes met one last time, no bitterness, no apology. Just two strangers with a shared past. She walked out. And I didn't follow. That silence wasn't cold, it was closure. I wasn't broken. I wasn't angry. I was free. And this time, that was enough.